Have you ever had a neighbor who believed they owned something, even though they didn't? Because that's exactly what happened when I bought the small lake next to my property. To me, it was just a quiet piece of land, a peaceful place where I could fish, relax, and enjoy the view. But to my neighbor, it was apparently the end of the world. And before the situation was over, a 6-foot fence ended up splitting her yard right down the middle. Let me explain. A few years ago, I bought a house on the edge of a quiet rural neighborhood. The property itself was nice, but the best feature wasn't even on my land. Right next to my property sat a small private lake. It wasn't huge, more like a large pond surrounded by trees, but it was beautiful. Clear water, tall grass along the shore, and during the evenings you could hear frogs and birds everywhere. For years, the lake had been owned by an elderly farmer who lived a few miles away. Most people in the neighborhood assumed it was public, but technically it wasn't. One of those people was my neighbor, Linda, but like many neighborhood stories, people eventually started calling her Karen. Karen lived in the house directly next to the lake, and for years she had treated the lake like it was part of her backyard. Her kids swam there. Her family held picnics near the shore. She even built a small wooden bench right next to the water. All of it without actually owning the land. When the elderly farmer decided to sell the property, I made an offer. Not because I needed more land, but because the idea of owning that peaceful little lake was too good to pass up. The purchase went through quickly. The paperwork was signed, and just like that, the lake officially became part of my property. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. Karen continued walking down to the lake like she always had. Her kids played near the water. Her dog ran around the shoreline. I figured she simply hadn't heard the news yet. So one afternoon I walked over to introduce myself and explained the situation. That conversation did not go the way I expected. Karen stared at me like I had just told her something impossible. Then she laughed. She said I couldn't possibly own the lake. According to her, the lake had always been community space. I calmly explained that it had never been public land. The farmer had simply allowed people to use it, and now I owned it. Karen's attitude changed instantly. The smile disappeared, and suddenly she was very angry. She accused me of trying to steal the lake from the neighborhood, which didn't make any sense because it had been privately owned the entire time. But Karen didn't care about legal details. In her mind, the lake was hers. Over the next few weeks, things became increasingly strange. Karen continued using the lake exactly like before. She held barbecues near the water. Her kids swam there. Her dog chased ducks along the shoreline, even after I politely asked her to stop. One afternoon, I walked down to the lake and found Karen hosting a birthday party right on my property. There were tables, decorations, and about 20 guests sitting near the water. When I reminded her that the land was private, she told me I couldn't force everyone to leave. That's when I realized something important. Karen didn't respect the property lines because there weren't any visible ones. At least, not yet. So I hired a professional survey team. They spent 2 days mapping the exact boundary between our properties, and the results were interesting. Very interesting. It turned out Karen had built several things on land that didn't belong to her. The wooden bench near the lake, part of her garden, even a small section of her backyard fence. All of it was technically sitting on my property. Once the survey was complete, I made a decision. If Karen needed a reminder about property lines, I would give her one, a very clear one. I hired a contractor and ordered a 6-foot privacy fence, a strong wooden fence that followed the exact legal boundary between our properties. According to the survey map, that boundary ran straight through a corner of Karen's backyard, right between her garden and the bench near the lake. Construction started the following week. Karen noticed the work almost immediately, and that's when the meltdown happened. She stormed across the yard shouting at the workers to stop. She demanded to know what they were building. When I explained it was a property fence, she completely lost her temper. Karen screamed that I couldn't build a fence there. She claimed it would ruin her yard. That's when I showed her the survey map. The fence wasn't on her land, it was on mine. Every single inch of it. Within 2 days, the fence was finished. 6 feet tall, solid wood panels, running exactly along the legal property line. And yes, it cut through the corner of Karen's yard, separating her bench and garden from the rest of her property. But the most important part was near the lake. The fence completely blocked her access to the shoreline. The same shoreline she had used for years without permission. Now it was fully enclosed on my side. Private, quiet, exactly the way I'd planned. Karen called the city to complain. She even tried contacting a lawyer, but every survey and inspection confirmed the same thing. The fence was legal because it stood on my land. After a few weeks, Karen finally stopped arguing. She removed the bench from the lake area. Her garden was relocated, and the fence stayed exactly where it was. These days, the lake is peaceful again. No loud parties, no random visitors, just quiet evenings by the water. Exactly the reason I bought it in the first place. And Karen, she still lives next door. But she doesn't visit the lake anymore because sometimes the best way to solve a boundary dispute is to build a boundary. If you watch this story all the way to the end, leave a comment and tell me, which city and country are you watching from? And if you enjoy HOA and Karen drama stories like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story.